Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar, Imposing Tickets for Cut and Stack. This is actually a very recurring question. And what the problem is, you probably know, but I will explain anyway to make sure we're all on the same page. What you see at the top of the screen is a ticket, a movie ticket, for example, and of course it features a beautifully designed penguin. And what I actually want is a number of printed tickets. In my example here, I want 100 tickets printed. Each ticket has the same design, but it also has a sequential number printed on it. And the question is, what do I need to do in the imposition engine to go from one ticket to 4 stacks of tickets that are numbered from 1 to 25 and then 26 to 50, 51, and so on, that if I cut the imposed sheet, I get 4 stacks of 25 tickets, and all I have to do is put them one on top of the other, and I have sequentially numbered 1 to 100. And in order to do that, you need something like this. You need to generate sheets, and you see the first 2 sheets that you need here. On those sheets, you'll have 4 tickets, and the 4 tickets need to be numbered in a precise way so that if these sheets are cut in 4 and then the resulting stacks are put on top of each other, that they will be sequentially numbered from 1 to 100. So how do I generate these sheets from a single ticket? That is the challenge. And the way to do this in pdfToolbox is, of course, the imposition engine. Now, the imposition engine can be used for many things. You can find it and test it in the switchboard, and on the left-hand side, you see the arrange pane of the switchboard where all of the different imposition technology lives. In the middle, you see one of the easy-to-use imposition schemes, step and repeat. There's a bunch of other ones that are easy to use that you just have to configure some parameters for, enup, fill page, booklet, and so on. And on the right-hand side, you see the impose tool. The impose tool is the difficult imposition tool, I should say the more powerful imposition tool. And the reason it is more complex and more powerful is because at the bottom you have the imposition scheme and you have the sheet configuration. And those are 2 configuration files, and together they determine how the imposition is going to do its job. Now, let's take a look at pdfToolbox and see how we can tackle this ticket problem. And I have pdfToolbox here, luckily, and I have the switchboard, and I can go to arrange and then impose. And I will take a file. Surprise, surprise, it has a penguin on it. And then I have in the impose tab of the switchboard the capability of selecting an imposition scheme and a sheet configuration. Now, I don't want to tell you everything that you can read in the documentation for imposition, but in essence, the sheet configuration determines where the different elements are going to come on a sheet and how big the sheet is and so on. The imposition scheme, or run list as the file itself is called, determines what the logic is. Which parts of the original file are put where? Is each page put on the imposed sheet once or twice or in different locations? Is it wrote? All of these things, all of the logic that goes into an imposition is contained in the imposition scheme. If I run this, let it run through all of the sheets. There we go. If I run this, I end up, and I will scroll through some of them. So I end up with 25 sheets in total, as you can see here at the bottom left. And each of these sheets is now the original penguin times 4, which is what we said we wanted. I don't have a fancy design for them, but the principle is what counts in this particular case. And then in between the feet of this cute little penguin, a number has been added. And as you can see, that number is in fact identifying this as ticket number 1, number 26, number 51, and number 76. And if I scroll through the pages, you can see that the one on the left-hand side, the left-hand top, will go from 1 to 25, and then the one there went from 26 to 50, and then 51 to 75, and 76 to 100. So this is exactly what we want to accomplish. The question is, how did we get there? Well, we already know it's with the imposition config files, and these config files can be accessed by going into here in the action menu at the bottom of the switchboard and then saying manage imposition configs. And when you do that, you end up with this folder. pdfToolbox will open the folder for you where you find these files. And normally most of these files will be called .runlist or .sheetconfig. You can also have PDF files in there, that can play a role as well. And there will be a file that is created automatically by pdfToolbox called fontnames.txt, where you can see which fonts you have on your system and what the name is with which you can use those in the imposition. But let's have a look at the configuration files that we're using. And to do that, I have opened Visual Studio Code with a folder on the left-hand side. And what we used was this Penguin tickets, that's the sheet config, and this 100 tickets, which is the run list. So let's take a look at the sheet config. I said that the sheet config contains the information about the sheet itself, and that's exactly what you see here. This is the final size of the imposed sheet. Because my Penguin is 6 by 6 centimeters, my imposed size will be 12 by 12. So 4 penguins in total. And then you have slots for all of the penguins. Each of these slots has an ID and it defines where that penguin is going to be. All of my slots are 60 by 60 millimeters. And the first two numbers that you see here identify where on the imposed sheet that particular slot is going to be used. So the left and the bottom of that particular slot. So that varies for all of the penguins that I want. And then I also added 4 slots with different IDs, and these will contain the number that I'm adding. So slot number 1 will be this lovely penguin. Well, actually this lovely penguin, no, the top one, I'm right. 0 for the left and 60 millimeters from the bottom. So we're talking about this one here. And then the slot for the number has basically the same coordinates, but a little bit higher than the actual ticket. So that's why the 1 ends up nicely in between the feet of that penguin. So this is the way the imposed sheet is going to look at the end. Where does the information come from? Where do the numbers come from and so on? That comes from the run list. And you can see a bunch of explanation at the top to explain what happens. But in general, what happens is that I start from the information on how many tickets I want. In this case, I want 100 tickets. And that means you can read all of this to figure out how that works in the imposition scheme. But that means that if I want 100 tickets and I know that I have 4 tickets on each page, well, I'm going to have 25 sheets generated. And that's the calculation that I perform here. So 25 sheets in total, and same calculation here. And then what I'm doing is I'm calculating what the number is going to be on each sheet. Now, sheet number 1 starts with the number 1. That's what you see here. And then the second one will be the number 1 plus 25, so 26. That's exactly what we see here. Then the next one is again plus 25, so 51, and then again plus 25, giving me 76. Yeah? So there's a little bit of logic going on here to determine what these numbers are going to be, but in essence, you look at how many tickets do I want in total, how many tickets do I have on one imposed sheet, and the number of total sheets that you generate will be the division of those two numbers. Now, in this particular imposition config, the number is fixed, and I could change it here to 1,000 or 10,000 or whatever I want. But of course, configurations in imposition also support variables. So you could have a variable that is generated by an automation tool like FileTrain that comes in here, and that determines how many sheets are going to be generated in the end, and all of the other calculations that go on here will still be valid. Now, let's look at the rest of this imposition configuration here. Well, we're going to loop until we have the number of sheets that we want, and each time we loop, we're going to create a new sheet, an empty page, 12 by 12 centimeters in this particular case, and I'm going to use position page to place a penguin in each of the slots I had defined for penguins. There are 4 slots on that page that were determined or destined to get penguins, and these 4 instructions actually add the penguins into each of those slots. So this adds the tickets to the imposed page. And then the next bit is not position page to add a page onto the imposed sheet, but it's place text, which adds text to the imposed sheet. Where? Well, this is the number of the slot where this is going to be added. So you can see slots 101, 102, 103, and 104. This is also what we saw in the sheet config. And then I'm going to add that slot, ticket counter 1. That's where we started. And so the first time this will be 1. And once I've added, I'm going to increment that value. So my second sheet, it will be 2. The third sheet, it will be 3, and so on, just until it reaches 25. And at 25, this loop logic will end the loop, and we end up with what we see here. So let me just recap this very quickly. We start from 1 ticket, whatever design you want. I have a sheet config pair, so a run list and a sheet config that will determine what the imposition engine is going to do. And when I execute that, it will generate 25 sheets. There we have them. And on those 25 sheets, those numbers will be added in such a way that if I make 2 cuts in the sheet, 1 horizontal, 1 vertical, I will end up with 4 stacks, and those stacks can be put on top of each other, and then I will have sequentially tickets from 1 to 100. As I said before, the design of this ticket, of course, is very, very simple. The design of the number that gets added is very, very simple. These things can be spiced up, of course. The imposition configuration that I have here is fixed. Of course, you can use variables to do more stuff with that as well. So there's a lot of adjustments that you can do to make this more powerful. But in general, this shows you that when I go back to my presentation here, that transforming or going from 1 single ticket to a stack of 100 or whatever the number is tickets in a nice sequential way, so that I don't have to reorder them, is very, very possible in pdfToolbox. The only thing you have to do is you need to have an imposition configuration that has the correct number of slots and does the correct calculations, as we've seen here, to determine which numbers end up on sheet 1, on sheet 2, and so on.